Hello, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture. I'm here with my husband, Casey. Want to say hi?
Hi.
We are at Tony's Garden Center in Southeast Portland. So, April is a time of year when folks get really anxious and feel that kind of like anticipatory joy about the garden year that is starting to unfold, right? And so when the weather is nice in early April, Portlanders are at the garden center. Now, I've never been to Tony's before. Several folks in my neighborhood have highly recommended this center many times, and I've just never had a chance to come here. And we were in the neighborhood. It's early April. The weather is nice. It's dry. And so I want to come look and see what is available here. I keep a list on my phone of plants that I'm actively looking for my garden. And I'm going to check that list against things that are here. But I just want to show you around Tony's, let you know what is available this time of year. No, they don't sponsor me, but I really love to do nursery tours. It's something that I really enjoy because there's a lot of diversity around Portland, the various nurseries and what kinds of things they offer. And it also is a good chance to look and see like, what are things that I might want to plant in my garden in early spring? What is available in the nursery? And what do I want to think about adding now? So the iron is hot and we need to strike with planting certain plants right now. And some plants we want to wait a little bit longer, and some things we actually want to plant in the fall. So let's go take a little walk around and see what they have available. Maybe I'll find some things to pick up, and maybe you'll find some inspiration for what you want to add to your permaculture garden, your cottage garden, your flower border, your veggie garden this year. You ready?
Located at 10300 Southeast Holgate Boulevard, Tony's was a straight shot south from my house and easy to get to. Now, I'm located in Portland, Oregon, in Zone 8B, and these are plants that do well in my climate, but your nursery may have different stock. Camellias, for example, are a plant that are traditionally grown here in our acid soil, as well as Forsythia, a wonderful choice for a beautiful early spring blooming shrub, although it doesn't do much the rest of the year. Typically, when you walk into a nursery, the front display is going to be the things that are vibrant and blooming right now, but it doesn't mean this is the best time of year to plant them. I tend to prefer to plant things when they are not already flowering, as that provides an additional stress on the plant to be transplanted at the same time it is working on putting out blossoms. For example, this native flowering currant here. I'm not generally a fan of those annual bedding plants. I prefer to invest in perennials, but if you have those gaps in your bed, let's take a look at this beautiful magnolia here. It does great in my climate. If you look at those annual flowers, for the opportunity they provide to fill in those gaps while your other perennials are just getting going, they may be a good choice for you. Tony's had a good selection of vining plants. Since my garden is 1/4 acre, including the house, that means I don't have a ton of space, and I like to think about planting vertically. Clematis montana, like these here, is one of my favorites. I have 2 in my garden. Those vertical plants can grow up and over structures and provide color, shade, blossoms, beautiful foliage, and definitely food for pollinators as well. So I'm always trying to think about, how do I maximize my use of vertical space? Maybe those climbers in your garden, like clematis, are ones that you want to include, and maybe you are thinking more about something that is a vertical plant that provides food. Tony's had a good selection of each. Oh, quick warning here, if you're thinking about putting wisteria in this time of year, please check out my wisteria video so you know what you're getting into. I've been eyeing this very vibrant Lonicera honeysuckle for a couple of years now. The colors are a little bit hot for my garden, but I'm still trying to figure out if I can find a place where it will work. April is not just a good time to put in vining plants, it's also a good time to get those berry bushes and canes in the ground. Tony's had a good selection of blueberry plants. It is not too late to plant your blueberries or your raspberries or your strawberries, and I will get into that more here in a little bit. First, let's look at the raspberries that Tony's had in stock. They had 2 of my favorites. Number 1, Fall Gold. This is the best repeat. It fruits both in June and in October. Delicious sweet raspberry. They also have black caps. This variety, Munger, is a really good improved variety. Look at that beautiful purple blush on the canes. It's not too late to plant grapes either. I prefer to plant grapes when they're completely dormant, and honestly, I've gotten all of my grapes for free as cuttings from other folks, but they had a good selection here if you want to purchase them. Now remember earlier I was speaking about those vining plants that produce food. They have a good selection here of hardy kiwis, Actinidia arguta. This is Ken's Red. This is a very good variety. I used to grow it in my garden and my chickens killed the vine, so I will probably be replacing it soon. If you're looking to plant fruit trees now, it's not too late to plant figs. Good timing. Now, brown turkey is kind of a standard. It's probably my least favorite fig that does well in this climate, but they have several different kinds that do well here, including my much beloved Desert King, which cranks out the fruit. For being a smaller nursery, I was quite pleased with the extensive variety that they stocked, and all of the plants looked really strong and healthy. Tony's clearly propagates a lot of their own plants, and their greenhouses were very neat and tidy with lots of starts going. April is an appropriate time to plant your lilacs now before they begin flowering. Both Miss Kim and Bloomerang are small, compact varieties that put out small but beautiful and fragrant blossoms. I have both in my garden planted in pots. Now let's get to my favorite area, the small starts of flowering perennials. I am such a sucker for these. Lots of things I start from seed, but sometimes I just don't have the space or time or energy, and I'm not opposed to buying starts, but I buy small. All of these Aquilegia here are a great example. In my rainy slug-prone climate, however, I steer clear of delphiniums, even though they were my mother's favorite. They tend to be slug-chewed, and they're actually a quite short-lived perennial, typically living only about 3 years, so I don't grow them in my garden. Now, they don't look like much right now, but these are Coreopsis, which are a fabulous choice for a sunny, hot spot. This is Zagreb. It is hands down my favorite variety of yellow blooming Coreopsis. A great choice for the front of a border, and they can handle quite a bit of neglect. Another good one to plant right now is Rudbeckia, Black-Eyed Susans. They come in various heights, so be sure to check the tag. Great for a sunny spot, and boy, do they bring in the native bees. Longhorn bees really love this flower. Another good one for bringing in pollinators is that old standby Echinacea. I was shocked at how many varieties that Tony's had. Probably 10 different varieties, and the straight species as well if you don't want a varietal. As with Rudbeckia, your Echinaceas are going to come in various heights, so when you are planning your flower border, be sure to check the finished blooming height of the plant and plant accordingly. It can be really tempting to get one or two of everything when you are seeing such a beautiful display of potential in all of these perennial blooming flowers, but try to think about what your goals are for your garden and realize that having swaths of color, having bands of color in the garden works better than individual plants. This is Nepeta catmint. It is not going to bring in cats like catnip, but it is going to bring in the pollinators. This is a great choice for a low water, high sun area. When I'm looking for plants, I'm checking down at the base to see if I can get multiple divisions out of one 4-inch pot, so that I can create those waves, those clumps, those patches in the garden that have more dramatic effect than one individual plant. My climate is perfect for peonies. However, we struggle with spring rains knocking the blossoms off. Still absolutely worth growing anyway. Not too late to plant them. Keep in mind, once you plant your peonies, they do not like to be transplanted again. So pick a spot that you really like where they are well suited, because if you dig them up and transplant them, they can get fussy and sometimes not want to bloom for a few years after being moved around. I tend to plant my peonies in my fruit guilds underneath my plum and apple trees. I think they do very well there. All right, y'all know how much I love hardy geraniums. This variety, Roseanne, is hands down my favorite. A great, reliable bloomer if you can find it. Great in those fruit guilds for filling in. They have other species as well, many different varieties, but for me, Roseanne is the best. Okay, let's talk about something I don't normally feature on this channel, which is grasses. Ornamental grasses can provide movement and architecture in a garden. I much prefer the ones that die back in the winter. I find they're much easier to prune than the ones that are evergreen. I'm going to be adding some little blue stem in some hot, sunny parts of my garden this year to add the form and structure that I'm looking for and the low water needs of those portions of the garden. Definitely a place for ornamental grasses in a permaculture garden. If you don't want grasses, but you want a plant that can handle similar circumstances, look no further than Achillea. I'm not a big fan of the yellow blooming yarrows, but I do have white, which is native in my area, and I also have some varietals in pink and red. A great choice for spots in the garden where it's sunny and you're not quite sure what else to put in, and you need something that's kind of ground covery but also blooms. Keep in mind yarrow can spread vegetatively and by seed, some varieties quite vigorously. It's a great time to plant the old standby for a sunny spot, sedums. I have autumn joy in my garden, a great plant for those areas that are hot and sunny and get low water in the summer, but sedums can also stand up to the wet winters that we have here. I didn't poke around too hard in the traditional landscaping shrubs as they're not really my jam, but Tony's appears to have a good selection. If you are looking to add some shrubs this time of year, I can't recommend Ceanothus highly enough. The California lilac, of which there are many species, some of which are native to Oregon, a great choice that has unbelievably ultraviolet flowers that absolutely are covered with bees in the summer. They even had a variegated variety that I wasn't really familiar with, although you do pay a premium for those specialty varieties. Moving into the shade house, they had a nice selection of the typical shade plants you would expect to find in an Oregon garden center. Now, I do want to say that right off the bat, they had a number of epimediums that are great and I have in my garden. They also had some things I would not plant in my garden like gunnera, which needs a lot of moisture and it gets enormous, a gorgeous, gorgeous plant, but it needs to be planted in a large garden near a pond. They also had a nice collection of potted hostas. You can get them bare root earlier in the season, but this time of year you typically need to buy them in a pot. Now, some folks here don't like hostas because they tend to get slug chewed early on in the season. I find I just don't look at mine very much early on. They tend to look a little bedraggled and nibbled, but as the season gets going, they are a great choice for a shade garden. Really beautiful and provide nice structure and a nice backdrop for those prettier plants like your bleeding hearts or like your pig squeak here. Look at this pig squeak, unbelievably bright colors. A good choice for a shade area that's dry. However, they do spread, and I find that a lot of folks overutilize them. Most garden centers have a wide selection of heuchera because they have a lot of genetic diversity and all of those varieties are trademarked. So they can be a little bit expensive and proprietary. But I'm always finding new varieties that are really pretty and I'm tempted by, look at this one, really, really lovely. In my shade garden, however, this niche tends to be filled by my native coral bells, the fringe cup. If you're like a lot of folks in my gardening group, perhaps the harsh winter has killed your rosemary and some of your other herbs. A nice selection here. I think it's important to remember these Mediterranean herbs are typically hardy in our climate, but if we have an exceptionally bad winter, you may need to replace them. I've seen a lot of folks whose rosemary have died this past winter, and it's okay to accept that our plants have their limit. Now they're just starting to get those annual veggie starts in. You can see here there's going to be a lot more coming in soon, but it is a good time to go ahead and plant those strawberries. Don't worry about tomatoes and peppers yet. It's too early, but it's not too early to plant your strawberries. Back at the beginning of this video, I said I was not a big fan of annual bedding plants, but I do sure love sweet alyssum. I typically start it from seed, but you can get it in starts in trays in varieties of purple and white. It's a beautiful plant. It's a little darkened here because the cold kind of upsets it, but a great infill plant if you do need to add something and the bees love it. Next time I will have to bring Ruth with me because the houseplant selection was great. Their hothouse had beautiful plants, a large and diverse array, and they had really nice displays. It was lovely. I'm not typically that much of a houseplant person. I was before I had kids, but houseplants are kind of the purview of my eldest. She really has a fondness for them, and this does not disappoint. I think if you are into houseplants, you should come to Tony's and check out what they have. Look at the texture on this one, the colors, the shapes, the forms, and all, plants that if you don't have a large garden outside and maybe you can't necessarily engage in permaculture food production, you still can enjoy houseplants. You still can enjoy greenery and nature like these angel wing begonias here indoors in your house. I think sometimes in permaculture, we can be really limiting and think only of things that are highly functional and not necessarily those things that just improve our quality of life by existing. By us dwelling amongst them, we feel better and our enjoyment of nature increases. So don't discount the value of houseplants that are purely quote unquote decorative in permaculture.
So thanks for coming around Tony's with us today. I didn't find anything on my list to get, but there were lots of really cool plants. So I hope those tips about what kinds of perennials you might want to be putting in right now and how you want to think about planting and using them in the landscape and what kinds of choices you want to make was helpful for you. I'm going to keep looking for those few things on my list that I'm really having a hard time finding. Nurseries keep getting different things in from their suppliers every week, and they often don't know what they're going to get. And so I found it's best to check back frequently if you are looking for specific items. It's hard for nurseries nowadays to special order things for you. And so I'm going to keep coming back. I mean, any excuse to come back to a plant nursery. You don't have to twist my arm for me to do that. Don't forget to check out the description below for ways you can support the work of this channel. And also, please, if you could click like and subscribe, that would be super awesome. I'll be back soon. Bye-bye.